wanted a fight right here.
Who comes first, me or Carly?
Seems like maybe I interrupted something.
I think it's time we focus our attention on adopting.
I'm starting to think that my grandma's in trouble.
This isn't happening. You're not here.
Here's the part nobody questions. Rocco's community service placement at the hospital is about as subtle as a plot twist wearing a neon sign. Seemingly, nothing can derail a daytime storyline faster than a sudden detour into urgent weather reporting, particularly when the urgent content amounts to little more than atmospheric small talk that could have politely waited for the evening news. Yet, once again, programming is held hostage so viewers can be informed that clouds exist. Riveting. Meanwhile, in Port Charles, the saga of Anna lumbers on, demanding patience it has long since failed to earn. Adding to the melodrama, Peter has adopted an accent so theatrical it practically files its own equity paperwork. Either he's auditioning for a different show entirely, or someone is hallucinating, though, frankly, both options feel equally plausible. Then there is Britt, who, astonishingly, may be the only person in town in possession of a functioning emotional compass. Her insistence that Jason must finally choose what she represents in his life is almost refreshing. What is less refreshing is Jason's unwavering emotional codependency on Carly, a bond so dense and immovable it could be classified as geological. Any prospective partner would be forgiven for declining a relationship built atop such a lopsided triangle. The expectation is simple. If one hopes to build a future, one must stop orbiting Carly's gravitational pull long enough to enter another person's atmosphere. Questions linger elsewhere. Whether Willow regrets hurting Drew remains unspoken, though her expressions suggest a woman haunted by choices she pretends were inevitable. And the idea of Chase cheating with Willow? The town's moral bar may be low, but even that speculation manages to limbo beneath it. Medical logic takes its own dizzying journey. The warning signs of a stroke are not exactly esoteric knowledge, yet Drew displayed none of the textbook indicators: high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, smoking, or even basic sedentary habits. One might expect Lucas to demonstrate at least mild curiosity about the convenient timing of these symptoms that appeared out of thin air. But apparently, curiosity has been placed on hiatus. Suspicion is further fueled by Rocco's sudden debut at the hospital as part of his community service. Traditionally, such service involves fluorescent vests and roadside trash bags, not strolls through medical corridors. Convenient placement, coincidental timing, and yes, an unobstructed view of a certain syringe finding its way into a disposal bin make it all a bit too tidy to ignore. Elsewhere, Lulu's proclamation that she distrusts the WSB but finds its latest representative perfectly fine demonstrates a level of investigative instinct that would make any seasoned journalist weep. If this is the bar for reportage in Port Charles, the weather interruptions may be the most reliable information viewers receive all week. And as for Brooklyn's apparently eternal wardrobe of black, whether it's a fashion statement, a strategic concealment, or simply the city's unofficial uniform of brooding, no one seems willing to offer clarity. Finally, Britt's attempt to provoke Carly into a fight hardly requires a decoding manual. When emotions fail to generate movement, agitation tends to do the trick, and nothing agitates quite like Carly confronted with her own reflection in someone else's frustration. In short, Port Charles continues its grand tradition of half-answers, delayed revelations, and emotional entanglements tighter than any medical mystery it attempts to present. Are you fed up with watching Chase defend Willow as though denial were a full-time occupation? General Hospital has always thrived on improbable plot twists, but the current storyline appears determined to test the outer limits of narrative gravity. Maxie is poised to awaken to the revelation that Nathan is not only alive, but has been strolling around in plain sight. One can only imagine the emotional fireworks when someone, Mac, Felicia, or both, finally breaks the news. Meanwhile, Drew Kane's congressional career seems to have met a rather abrupt pharmacological obstacle. Evidently, nothing says devoted spouse quite like an injection of ketamine, digitalis, potassium chloride, insulin. Take your pick from Willow's growing catalog of amateur pharmacology. The absence of so much as a needle mark on Drew's neck should raise eyebrows, but the show kindly assumes no one on screen possesses peripheral vision. Drew treated Willow with near religious devotion, and her gratitude manifests as attempted elimination. Charming. Now that she has effectively removed Drew from the chessboard, the lingering question becomes, who is next? The woman who insists she would do anything for her children has already demonstrated an impressive willingness to redefine anything to include actions that border on self-sabotage and, occasionally, homicide. Michael should perhaps avoid standing too close to sharp objects. Willow's logic, if one can call it that, has become the eighth wonder of Port Charles. She unilaterally relocates her children into Drew's home while Michael is lying in a German hospital, recovering from severe burns. She then signs the children over to Drew entirely, overlooking their father and every available grandmother in favor of a man she proclaims she trusts above all others. After losing in court, she decides the best corrective measure is to marry him, convinced that matrimony will somehow retrieve her custody rights. The judge explicitly states that her entanglement with Drew hurt her case, and Michael was willing to agree to joint custody provided she ended things with Drew. Yet, she clings to the very relationship standing between her and her children, then proceeds to shoot Drew, survive the fallout, profess her undying love on the witness stand, win her case, and immediately inject him with a mystery compound that looks suspiciously life-threatening. She cannot be retried for attempted murder, which appears to embolden her, though it is unclear how attacking Drew again assists in regaining custody. By refusing to choose between Drew and her children, she has engineered a scenario where she risks losing both, an impressive achievement in counterproductive decision-making. Nina, inconveniently armed with truth, now faces a moral crossroads. She knows Willow has harmed Drew twice and possesses the one remaining opportunity to protect her surviving daughter by telling the authorities. Should she remain silent, she may soon discover that Willow's selective memory of past grievances remains inconveniently intact and vindictive. As if the chaos in Port Charles were not already robust, the show has taken the baffling step of resurrecting Peter August after years of narrative burial. This revival, coupled with the uninspired Anna and Faison retread, feels less like nostalgia and more like narrative necromancy gone wrong. The storyline never warranted resurrection and continues to drain enthusiasm from every scene it touches. And then there is Chase, tirelessly shielding Willow from consequences as though his personal mission is to redefine the limits of misplaced loyalty. The inevitable revelation that she is indeed responsible will require him to consume an impressive serving of figurative crow before a sizable audience. Many viewers are undoubtedly counting the minutes. General Hospital excels at drama, but this arc tests even the genre's tolerance for implausibility. The show has revived villains no one missed, recycled plot lines no one wanted, and crafted a protagonist whose decision-making renders her a hazard to both loved ones and bystanders. Port Charles deserves better, but for now, The audience watches in morbid anticipation of the next spectacularly avoidable disaster. Are you invested in Jason's love life and curious why Britt keeps getting blamed for a mess she didn't create? General Hospital's current trajectory appears to be a masterclass in how to test the limits of audience patience. The creative team seems determined to stack every storyline with manufactured peril, inexplicable motivations, and a revolving door of dubious villains. None more grating than the new WSB boss, Cullen, who radiates all the charm of a damp dish rag. His nastiness is apparently meant to be menacing. Instead, it reads like an exercise in how quickly viewers can reach for the remote. Meanwhile, the ongoing Willow saga continues to demonstrate just how dangerous a little medical training can be in the wrong hands. Her behavior has escalated from reckless to outright hazardous, producing the very real concern that children, Daisy included, are safest on a different continent. The speculation surrounding what she injected into Drew to induce a stroke only underscores the point. With her nursing knowledge and a thirst for revenge, Willow hardly needed assistance orchestrating a perfectly quiet act of sabotage. But if assistance did arrive, many eyes understandably drift toward Sidwell, the alleged supplier of conveniently potent pharmaceuticals, the same type previously handed to Maxie. Of course, no discussion of Port Charles drama would be complete without the parade of romantic entanglements and misplaced loyalties. Some remain firmly Team Chase, applauding his unwavering decency even as he accumulates fresh indignities. Others have grown weary of him entirely, anticipating the moment he finally recognizes Willow's duplicity and realizes that the fool's crown fits a bit too well. His eventual tumble from the moral high ground is, at this point, less a question of if than when. Jason's romantic prospects continue to spark debate, though the Britt detractors might consider revising their narratives. Her so-called fight with Carly was a calculated sacrifice to shield Jason from a WSB threat delivered with all of Cullen's signature charm. Whether one prefers Jason with Britt or Carly, the emotional investment between Jason and Britt is hardly imaginary, no matter how vigorously some wish it to be erased. Then there is the ongoing mystery of Alexis's overly attentive assistant, who hovers with such conspicuous concern that one must assume a hidden agenda or a family tie waiting to be revealed, perhaps even something connected to Christina. When someone in Port Charles cares that much, it usually isn't out of admiration. Elsewhere, Anna's kidnapping has devolved into an unnecessary psychological carnival. If the intention was simply to neutralize her because she was getting too close, the hallucinatory torture feels like an extravagant and narratively perplexing flourish. One peril would have sufficed. There was no need to turn the ordeal into a discount haunted house. The lab storyline surrounding Britt, too, has reached the point where viewers might reasonably request mercy. Watching her endlessly battered by plot contrivances is less intrigue than endurance test. A brief moment of levity arrived with Wes Ramsey's appearance, a welcome reminder that charisma does still exist somewhere in Port Charles. Finally, lingering questions persist about Drew's recovery and about Michael's increasingly suspicious maneuvering. His eagerness to shield the children from Willow, his anxiety over Drew's proximity, and the conveniently truncated conversation about prison arrangements have fueled theories that Drew's collapse was not only anticipated, but possibly engineered. Double jeopardy may shield Willow legally, but it doesn't shield her from narrative suspicion. Through all this, tributes to Anthony Geary struggle to satisfy anyone, though, to be fair, nothing produced at the moment seems capable of satisfying the chronically displeased. In short, Port Charles remains a swirl of scheming, questionable decisions, and romantic tension. Whether this direction qualifies as entertainment depends entirely on one's tolerance for chaos, conspiracies, and characters who cannot resist making their bad situations worse. Here's what nobody admits. Britt's protecting him storyline is just an elaborate way to stall actual character development. Soap operas have never claimed allegiance to realism, but even by their own elastic standards, the sudden demise of Drew, conveniently timed to the moment Willow sidesteps an attempted murder conviction, practically begs for an investigative task force. A heart attack or stroke is a tidy way to eliminate suspicion, yet the sheer dramatic choreography of it all demands raised eyebrows. One might imagine Chase abandoning the badge for a more fitting profession: private investigator. He could plant himself at Miller and Davis, where Alexis, inevitably incapable of resisting a confessional monologue, would unload the truth about Willow. And considering Willow's disposal technique for that incriminating needle, marching it straight into a hospital bristling with cameras instead of crushing it in the privacy of her own home, it's hard not to assume the writers want someone, somewhere, to connect the dots. Subtlety has clearly taken the week off. Meanwhile, the mysterious rendezvous involving Ross, Rocco, and Lulu appears designed to funnel a cryptic message to Laura. Who arranged it remains the dangling participle of the plot, likely by design, because nothing excites a soap more than secret meetings with no apparent orchestrator. Elsewhere, the storyline flirts with the possibility that Anna is simply asleep and dreaming her entire predicament, an ideal setup for resurrecting Peter, because the show has never met a villain it wouldn't exhume for Sweeps Month. And with Wes Ramsey apparently resurfacing, even temporarily, the production seems determined to test just how much déjà vu its audience can withstand. For better or worse, it's an energetic opening to the episode. Chase's impending discovery that he has been spectacularly wrong about Willow promises a satisfying reckoning, though the same cannot be said for the rest of the ensemble's fashion choices. Elizabeth's skirt, in particular, deserves a side plot of its own, preferably one that ends with its quiet removal from the wardrobe department. There remains, too, the enduring soap opera tradition of selective justice. Many characters have wandered away from felonies with nothing more than a wistful sigh, so Willow escaping unscathed would hardly be unprecedented. And while nobody is eager to see Michael take the blame, Drew's fate has already been sealed by narrative necessity, which, in this genre, is more binding than any legal statute. The Britt and Jason dynamic continues its familiar oscillation. One day passion, the next day paralysis, all in the name of protection. The routine is exhausting. At some point, a man who specializes in rescuing entire storylines from collapse does not require shielding from emotional turbulence. A simple confession from Britt, minus the Carly-adjacent angst, would accomplish more than this endless back and forth. Wes Ramsey's voice may evoke memories from a different series altogether, yet here it serves mainly as a reminder of how often this show recycles its own mythology. Reports claim Cameron Matheson isn't leaving the role of Drew anytime soon, which renders the earlier hysteria somewhat premature, though the production's track record with returns, resurrections, and surprise survivals suggests no status is ever permanent. Still, the pacing issues remain relentless. Britt's secrecy drags on. Anna's storyline drags on. Every plotline capable of resolution is placed carefully on cinder blocks and left idling. And now, a new riddle emerges. Brennan's remark that Britt is the new asset on Spoon Island. Whether this refers to an operational role, a hidden agenda, or simply another cliffhanger to hoard until Sweeps is anyone's guess. In summary, the show remains a masterclass in dramatic excess, half-finished threads, and narrative gymnastics, precisely the qualities that keep its audience exasperated, yet faithfully tuned in. Are you wondering why Agent Ross manages to make Sidwell look almost charming by comparison? The residents of Port Charles are many things, but subtle assassins they are not. Take Willow, for instance. If the objective is Drew's demise, her methods suggest she missed every useful lecture in nursing school. The misplaced gunshot, the ambiguous injection. Either she wants him merely inconvenienced, or she is conducting the world's most hesitant murder attempt. The motivation remains as murky as her technique. Meanwhile, an entirely different mystery simmers around Alexis's assistant, whose presence radiates the kind of unease that suggests a future plot twist is pacing impatiently in the wings. General Hospital has always delighted in dropping casual lines that blossom into seismic story shifts. Nina's remark to Kai about how people come back from a health crisis completely changed might as well have been delivered with flashing neon arrows. Should Cameron return scrubbed clean of his villainous sheen, the transformation alone could send Willow spiraling. A reformed Cameron would be a particularly inconvenient development for someone already auditioning for the role of most suspiciously devoted wife. Elsewhere, the wardrobe department appears determined to test the public's tolerance as Elizabeth continues wearing ensembles that defy aesthetic explanation. The day's one bright surprise, best left unspoiled, offered a rare burst of delight amid the chaos. Unfortunately, that brief moment of joy was immediately countered by the arrival of Agent Ross Callum, who seems intent on proving he can outmenace Sidwell by targeting children. Threatening Rocco is a bold strategy, particularly for someone already cultivating an aura of bureaucratic villainy. Britt Westbourne, allegedly the spawn of Faison, continues to display a level of timidity that would disappoint even the most forgiving henchman. Her reappearance was unnecessary, and her faint-heartedness continues to undermine the legacy of her lineage. Not to be outdone, Anna's visions are clearly not hallucinations. Someone has obviously tampered with something, possibly the town's water supply, given the number of people perceiving faces that do not belong to the individuals in front of them. Port Charles has been drugged before. History suggests it has not learned its lesson. Speculation also resurfaces about Willow and Nell's parentage, with the possibility of Stephen Clay as the paternal wildcard. Because nothing says stability like adding another unhinged twin into the mix. Chase, for his part, finally met the consequences of his chronically poor judgment. Demotion from detective to beat cop is an almost generous response to his ill-advised mission to aid Willow, whose loving wife act around Drew's medical crisis could only fool those not already acquainted with her talent for performative sorrow. Kai, naturally, saw straight through the spectacle. Alexis, newly positioned as Scout's guardian, earned a mild rebuke of her own for declaring the child her sole remaining connection to Sam. Danny, evidently, has been relegated to afterthought status, an impressive oversight even by Cassadine-adjacent standards. Agent Ross continues making rounds, interrogating Lulu and Rocco about Professor Dalton, while the boy dutifully begins community service at GH. Lulu dutifully relays the threat to Laura, while Jax attempts, and fails, to keep Jocelyn from sprinting headfirst into WSB danger. Her trip to Windermere to spy proves that curiosity remains the town's leading cause of self-inflicted crisis. Britt, in a final display of strategic melodrama, stages a fake breakup with Jason courtesy of a manufactured brawl, hoping to shield them both from Agent Ross's scrutiny. One wonders how long the performance will hold. And somewhere, amid all this, The question lingers ominously. How long before Chase, hopelessly trapped in Willow's orbit, crosses yet another line? Will it be a kiss, a full betrayal, or, most likely, both? In Port Charles, restraint is always the first casualty. Never ignore a suddenly important side character. Because Suzanne is about to prove, that's always a mistake. Drew appears destined for an extended disappearance, if not a final exit altogether, judging by his sudden transformation into a full-time fixture on the morning show circuit. Meanwhile, the ever-shadowy WSB continues to behave exactly as it always has, like an intelligence agency that long ago misplaced the intelligence part. The internal rot is hard to miss. Brennan is apparently unaware that Colum and Sidwell are operating as a matched set, while Nathan wanders the canvas in a state of convenient amnesia, executing tasks he cannot remember and raising absolutely no alarms. And because this universe delights in recycling its own mythology, one can only wonder whether Director Colum is yet another branch on the Faison family tree. A sibling, perhaps, eager to revive the family's long-standing tradition of morally bankrupt experimentation. Then comes Willow, a case study in catastrophic decision-making. If the goal is to sabotage Drew, depositing incriminating medical waste inside a hospital, a building defined by surveillance equipment and meticulous record-keeping, ranks as a masterclass in self-incrimination. Should anyone bother reviewing the tapes, the investigation will lead straight to the discarded needles, and, inevitably, to her. Chase, for his part, maintains his unwavering commitment to holding Michael responsible for nearly everything, from the shooting of Drew to the emotional crime of taking Willow away. The pattern becomes even more curious when considering Willow's past near brush with criminal charges for Drew's shooting, a situation she evaded despite being both the accused and a nurse trained in, one assumes, better judgment. Now Drew conveniently collapses again under suspicious circumstances. Stunning coincidence. Hovering at the edges is Suzanne, whose sudden narrative prominence all but guarantees that something bizarre is looming. Subtlety rarely survives long in this storyline ecosystem. And if the show's penchant for chaos truly knows no limits, one could almost imagine a scenario in which Alexis confronts Willow with evidence of her guilt. Not to deliver justice, of course, but to negotiate visitation rights. In this world, blackmail is practically a love language. Subscribe.